Yeah. Remember that stuff? Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Jennifer Gooch. I'm the children's librarian here at the Fort Thomas branch, and we are here ready to present to you some scaly friends from the Arrowhead Reptile Rescue. So.
Hi guys, my name is Dominique DeFalco. I work with Arrowhead Reptile Rescue, and I'm so excited to be here today and show you some animals. So we are going to have questions at the end. Okay, so after everything's done, I'll let you know we have questions. So same in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in there, and we have someone writing them down. So if you are in the room, I have to teach you something very important first, and this is called catch a bubble. So when I say catch a bubble, I need you to go like this. You do it, so catch a bubble. All right, so we're gonna do that, so we wanna make sure that we don't scare any of the animals or get too loud. So if I say catch a bubble, perfect, thank you so much. All right, so like I said, my name is Dominique. We have tons of cool animals to show you today. So first I wanna get started. Who knows the different types of reptiles? So raise your hand if you can name one. Yes.
Snake.
Snake, that's a good one, yes.
Dragon. Lizard.
Lizard, that's another great one. Does anyone know? We gotta raise your hand. Yes.
Komodo dragon.
Komodo dragons are a type of lizard, so that is a good one.
Snake.
We already said snakes. There's also turtles and tortoises. Yes, and then there's one other species called tuataras, which are really rare. They are only found in one place in the world. So they look a lot like lizards, but they're different. So we're gonna start off with our turtle friends. So there's a couple different types of turtles. There's ones that live in the water and ones that live on land. But the big thing is that all turtles have a shell. Yes, so the shell is the hard part on their back that feels like a piece of like wood or something really hard to protect them. So catch a bubble. Thank you. So a lot of people think that the turtle shells and tortoise shells can come off their body, but that's not true. So if you put your hand behind your back and you felt down the center of it, do you feel your spine?
Yeah.
Yes. So turtles and tortoises have a spine too, and it's attached to the shell. So you can see here. So this turtle passed away, and it gave its body to us so that we could use this to teach other kids about turtles and tortoises. So as you can see here, its spine goes all the way down its body. So that's why it's really important if you see a turtle or tortoise in the wild, that if you touch it, they can feel that. So be very gentle. And we never want to paint the shells of any turtles or tortoises we find, because this is their bone. You don't want paint going into your bones, so we don't want to put it on theirs. So one of the big things we do at Arrowhead Reptile Rescue is we take in injured turtles. So a lot of times this time of year, turtles can be hit by cars or lawnmowers, or something happens and your dog bites it, and it comes to us and has an injury. So what we can do, because we're certified wildlife rehabilitators, we can repair the shells so the animals can go live. We're gonna do questions at the end, okay, bud?
No.
So as you can see here, and I'm gonna have Anna walk around and show you, we have little brackets on the back of this turtle shell where this animal had been injured, and we were able to put its shell back together so that it could keep going and living after it was with us. So Anna's gonna walk around and show you that. So this is the time of year where you see a lot of turtles that are hit by cars or injured, and there's something going on. So it's really important to know, if it's a native species, you can't keep it. Native animals belong in the wild. So we want to make sure that if you find an injured friend like this, you can call us, or you can call another organization to help it. Because if you take an injured animal in and you try to keep it yourself, a lot of times it can't go back to the wild.
Right.
And that's not fair, right?
Right.
So we just talked about the tortoise and turtle shell, but how about we actually see one, right? So this is my friend Danielle, and she's going to show us a little tiny baby box turtle. So you guys see him? So we're going to bring him around. Hey, make sure you guys stay seated, okay? So do you see how he's using those little arms and he's trying to push off? Turtles aren't nearly as slow as you think. They're actually very fast. So you can see him right there. And one of the things you're going to notice when Danielle brings him around is that he's got these big claws on him, okay? And these claws are used for digging in the mud because they love the mud. So that's why you'll often see turtles outside after the rain because they came out and they enjoyed the mud and now they're on your front lawn. So while we bring him around, you can touch him. We're going to use the 2-finger rule, okay? So you can take him and touch, do one, catch a bubble. Thank you. We're going to do one pet down the back just like that. And remember what I told you is that they can feel it. So we want to be very gentle. Okay, so we've talked about turtles, and I mentioned tortoises too. So turtles and tortoises are very closely related, like a monkey is related to a gorilla, right? They kind of look the same, but they're different animals. So one thing you'll notice with our tortoise friend that we're going to bring over, so this is Tank. He is a Russian tortoise. And like I showed you on the box turtle, the box turtle has those really sharp claws. This guy also has really sharp claws. And they're going to kind of scratch up all over. Oh, he just got poop on me. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's just what happens when you work with animals. Sometimes you get poop on you. So you're going to see. I know. So that's just something that happens. We understand that working with these animals. So you guys, so turtles typically can live in the water and then also on land. Whereas tortoises, they live on land their whole life. So when you see a turtle or a tortoise, you can't tell if it's a turtle or a tortoise. If it's in the water, it can stay in the water. If you find it on land, don't throw it in the lake because we don't know for sure, right? And we don't want to hurt any turtles or tortoises. So these guys, the Russian tortoise here, is an herbivore. Does anyone know what that means? Raise your hand. Get in the back there. That is right. It only eats plants. So he loves his salads, he loves his vegetables, and he loves his fruits. So a lot of turtles and tortoises are going to be herbivores, but some of them are omnivores. So that means they eat meat products too. So the ones that live in the lakes, oftentimes they're going to eat fish, they're going to eat little crayfish, kind of whatever they can find in the lake.
The box turtle loves it.
Oh, the box turtle loves night crawlers, so those are worms. So they also like to eat worms too, which helps when they dig so much, right? So Anna, do you want to bring him around? So remember the 2-finger rule, just gently down the back, okay? Yeah, we're gonna wipe them off. Or take a quick hand sanitizer break, because sometimes that happens. So, turtles and tortoises can make awesome pets, but something you have to know is they live a really long time, okay? So the oldest tortoises in the wild have lived up to 300 years. That's crazy. So as a rescue, when we get these animals in that have been people's pets, a lot of times what happened is you bought a teeny tiny baby little tortoise and you didn't realize it was going to live 300 years, and some of them get up to 200 pounds. That's crazy. That's really big. So while these are cool pets, they can be really hard for a lot of people to take care of. So if you're ever interested in getting a pet turtle or tortoise, you have to remember that you're going to take care of it, your kids are going to take care of it, and then probably your grandkids too. And that's a lot of responsibility to pass on, right? And they get big, and they poop a lot, as you just saw, and they eat a lot of food. So those are our turtles and tortoises. They live all over the world, and you can find them in all different climates. The next type of reptile we're going to talk about are our lizards. So our lizard friends here, there's a couple of them that you're not going to be able to touch, okay? These are look, don't touch animals. And there's a few reasons for that. So one thing is that lizards have a mouth, and anything with a mouth can bite, right? So I want to make sure no one gets bit. and it kind of hurts when you get bit sometimes. Another thing is that some of our animals, because we're a rescue, are injured or sick when we get them in, right? So this is our friend here. This is Spyro. Spyro is a leopard gecko. I'm going to take him out for a moment so you guys can see, but remember, we're not going to touch him, okay? One of the biggest things we notice with lizards that come in as pets that are either abandoned or given to the rescue is something called metabolic bone disease. So you know when you're young and your parents tell you to drink milk because it makes your bones nice and strong? So reptiles also need things to keep their bones nice and strong. They need calcium, they need vitamin D, and this is something that a lot of times owners don't necessarily know that they need. And so what you'll have is their legs get kind of floppy because their bones aren't growing correctly, right? So we got a lot of sick animals like this where they look a little funny. They'll probably never be like a normal lizard, but they can still live a good life if they get the care they need. So this, our friend here, Spyro, is a leopard gecko. Leopard geckos are one of my favorite species of gecko. They are native to the Middle East, and they live in deserts and rocky areas, which is why you'll notice that they have a nice yellow color so that they can blend in with the dirt, and then their tails also can blend in with the rocks around them. So something you'll notice is he's got a pretty big tail, right? So a trick that a lot of lizards know how to do is that if they are scared or threatened, they're going to drop their tail and run off, right? So if you're a bird of prey, Danielle, you want to come up here and start walking around with him? Remember, look, don't touch, okay? So a lot of times lizards, the other animals that are going to eat it or scare it are going to be birds. And they're going to come from above and try to grab them. Or it's going to be bigger animals that are going to come and try to grab that tail. And what happens is an animal will grab that tail. The leopard gecko here, he's going to be like, okay, goodbye, tail, and drop it. And it's going to leave. And he can keep running while his tail sticks around and wiggles over here. So they store a lot of fat and a lot of water in those tails so that if they lose it, it's okay. But if they don't lose it, they can use it as a food source when food is scarce. So he is an insectivore. Can anyone guess what insectivore means? Yes.
It means they only eat insects.
That's correct. He only eats insects. So he eats a lot of bugs. We give him crickets, we give him worms, and we give him a lot of cockroaches, and they love it.
Any ants?
He does not eat any ants in captivity. In the wild, I bet he would. But because we have him in our home, we don't feed him any ants. So that is one of our lizard friends. So he is native to the desert. I'm going to show you another animal that's native to the desert, but looks very different because she's from a whole different part of the world. So this right here is Cinder. And Cinder is a bearded dragon. Right? Everyone gets excited about Cinder. Me too. So, Cinder is a bearded dragon. She gets that name because you see that big old beard under her neck? Kind of like this. So when she gets scared or upset, remember how we talked about the leopard gecko will lose his tail? She can't do that. Her tail's going to stay on at all times because there's bones going throughout her tail. There's no fat or water in there. What she's going to do when she's scared, she's going to puff up this neck really big. And she's going to puff up her whole body really big. And this neck turns black, kind of like Blackbeard the pirate, right? So she's going to get this big black neck, and she opens her mouth really wide and looks really scary, and animals kind of run away from that. So I'm going to have Anna walk around with Cinder. Catch a bubble. Thank you. So I'm going to have Anna over here walk around with Cinder, and you can pet Cinder. And one of the things you're going to notice with Cinder is that she has very rough skin. So she is native, which means she lives in Australia. And she lives in Australia in the desert. So it's really rough out there. It's got to be very dry so that she doesn't get a sunburn. So her skin feels that way too. So she is omnivorous. Does anyone remember what that means? Yeah, in the back.
It eats both plants and
It does eat both plants and animals. That's right. So Cinder loves to eat her bugs. Bearded dragons are really good at eating bugs. They're not very good at eating salads, but they're supposed to have salads too, which I'm kind of the same way. I'm not very good at eating salads, but that's okay. So she has to eat a mix of greens. She loves berries. She loves her superworms. Superworms are big mealworms. She loves her cockroaches, and she loves her crickets. So there's a lot she can eat. Bearded dragons are another great pet reptile if you're interested in getting one. But something you need to realize is she's a pretty big animal, so she needs a pretty big space. And they also, to make sure that you don't get the metabolic bone disease, like we talked about with the leopard gecko, you have to make sure that she's got good lighting, she's got really good calcium and vitamin D, so that she stays nice and strong. So I love our Australian species because Australia is really awesome for showing the different kinds of reptiles there. So we have another Australian species here, and this is our blue-tongued skink. Yeah, I love these guys. So this is Sandal. And Sandal is like the puppy dog of reptiles. All right? She does look like a snake. That's correct. So this is Sandal. She is a blue-tongued skink. If you can see there, you see her blue tongue going all over the place. She's like, hey guys, what's up? So this is another great pet reptile, but you're going to notice something really interesting. So like I said, she also lives in Australia. But do you notice how smooth she is? Right? So one of the things we talked about with Cinder is she's got all those spikes all around her, so that when she's scared, she puffs up really big and looks really scary, right? Sandal does not have that. She's very smooth-bodied. But when she's scared, what she's going to do, and she's not a very scared animal anymore. She's very spoiled. She's going to open her mouth and show that big blue tongue, and other animals are going to be like, what? And they're going to leave her alone, right? So I'm going to have Danielle walk around with with Sandal, and you guys can pet her as well. And you're going to feel on her back how she's really smooth. So she doesn't live in the desert like the bearded dragons do, right? So she doesn't need to keep really like tough skin because she's not going to be living in the desert very much, and she doesn't have to be as camouflaged with the rocks. So who knows what camouflage means? Yes.
London.
Yes. Catch a bubble. Thank you. So yes, so camouflage means they blend in. So Cinder blends in really well with other rocks, with all of the sand in the desert, where Sandal here is going to blend in better with more leaves on the ground and when it's rainy spots and in the mud. So she'll do really well with that. So Sandal is also omnivorous. So she eats both plants and animals. One of Sandal's favorite foods is eggs. We crack open an egg and she goes, can you do that? Yeah, so you're sticking your tongue in a raw egg. I don't recommend it, but she really likes it. And she will also, because she's a bigger animal, she'll eat bigger items of food. So sometimes she likes snails a lot, sometimes she'll eat little mice, and she'll eat a lot of different animals and plant matter. Sandal is, once again, a really good pet reptile, but you have to remember the lighting, the heating, and the space that they all need. So if you ever want to get a pet reptile, I recommend it. I have 10. I love them, but it's a lot of work. And I'm an adult, so I have to do all the work myself. So if you guys are watching, or if you're in the room and you're like, hey mom, I want to get a reptile, that reptile is going to be with you till you have kids. So you have to be very ready for that, or else it'll end up with us. And we already have enough. Okay. So our next lizard, this is another look, don't touch, because she is not very friendly. All right, so we remember. All right. So remember how we said that anything with a mouth can bite? Yeah, well, anything with claws can also scratch. All right, and she does a lot of that. So this is Bosk. All right, catching bubbles. Thank you. So Bosk is a Nile monitor. I need you guys to be quiet with her because she gets a little nervous and she doesn't like me very much. So we're going to pretend it's not me. Okay. So you'll also notice with her, so this is another species that doesn't live in the desert. She's more smooth bodied. It kind of feels like there's beads down her back. So how old do you guys think she is? Yeah.
Maybe 10.
No, this is a baby. She's probably about a year old, and she's got a lot of growing to do. So monitors are a type of lizard that gets very big. Monitors are native to Asia typically, and then there's also some tegus, which are similar to monitors that you can find in South America. So with monitors, you're gonna see, I'm gonna walk around a little bit with her. You see these giant claws? See those big claws? So she can dig really well. They can dig these deep burrows underground. She can also climb trees really well. You can find them everywhere. You don't want one of these loose in your house. They're gonna be on the ceiling before you know it. And you're also gonna notice this big long tail. So we've worked with Bosk a lot. When we first got Bosk, she wouldn't let anyone hold her without biting her, okay? And you know what they also do? So with this big long tail, we talked about different defense mechanisms that the other animals have, like sticking out the tongue or getting nice and big. One of the things that they can do with this is they whip it, okay? So they're gonna when they get angry, they're gonna pull that tail back and just right across the face. It hurts. I don't recommend it. So a Nile monitor like this is it's often a pet that people buy because they don't know what they're getting into, right? Something like this is gonna need like 6 feet of floor space, 6 feet of space vertically. They need a lot of work. And once again, it lives a long time. And something that's important to recognize with reptiles is it's not like they're a cat or a dog. So reptiles don't have this part of the brain called the amygdala. So the amygdala, can you say that? Amygdala. That is the part of the brain that controls emotions and like you love things and you have compassion towards other people. And that's why your dog gets really excited to see you every day. Reptiles don't have that. They don't really see us as like their friend. They know that we take care of them and we feed them. And so they trust us a little bit, but they don't love us like a cat or a dog does. So sometimes you'll get a little baby monitor that's going to be kind of mean, and it could be mean its whole life. And so that's why it's really important when you're getting these animals, you do a lot of research and you recognize that sometimes they're not going to be your best friend. And we have look, don't touch animals, right? All right. So those were our lizards. We showed you a lot. We're going to get into my favorite part of the day, which is the snakes. You guys ready? All right, let's go. All right, Maxwell. Thank you very much. All right. Our first snake of the day. His name is Fred. And he's a little fat. He is a lot fat. We're not trying to shame him, you know. He's doing this. COVID was hard, you know? Okay. I get it. All right. So this is Fred. He is a ball python. You guys see it on the screen there? He is the best. Ball pythons are one of the coolest pet reptiles you can have because they get their name for this reason. He's just balled up on my arm and he doesn't do anything else. So their scientific name is Python regius. So python is the genus. I almost messed that up really fast. It's been a while since I did one of these guys. So python is the genus, and that's the kind of snake he is. And then regius is the species. So Anna, if you want to bring him around. So when we touch him, 2 fingers down the back towards the tail. Okay? Yep. No, with the spots. With the spots. With the tail. Yes. So The reason they get the name Python Regis. So Regis kind of sounds like regality or royalty. That's because this is a species that is native to sub-Saharan Africa. And a long time ago, African tribes, the royalty would wear these snakes around their neck as like a sign of wealth or a sign of royalty. So they've kept that in their scientific name, Python Regis. So this is a strict carnivore. Who knows what carnivore means? Yes.
That means eat like fruits or vegetables.
That's an herbivore. So what's a carnivore? Do you know? Yeah.
It eats only meat.
He eats only meat. Yes. So Fred here, he eats only meat, and he eats mice and rats. So if you're gonna get a pet or a snake, you gotta feed him mice and rats. So, but he's really cool because ball pythons are a great pet. They're usually pretty docile. You don't have to worry about them moving too quickly, and they get to a very reasonable size. But remember what I said earlier, everything with the mouth can bite. So sometimes you do get bit by snakes. That's why it's really important to know what you're doing when you're working with snakes. And if you get bit, you let the animal get off, and then you clean up nice and good, which is why we have all this hand sanitizer all over the place. Because snakes aren't inherently scary. We kind of learn to be afraid of snakes, but they're really not that scary of animals. Like Fred seems kind of cool, right? We get questions at the end, bud. So before we get to our next snake, you guys probably know that snakes shed their skin, right? So the biggest difference, catch a bubble? Thank you. The best way to tell the difference between a snake and a lizard is that lizards don't have eyelids, or lizards have eyelids and snakes don't, right? So snakes have a scale that covers their eye so that they can never blink and they can never close their eyes. So our next animal is in shed, and I'm going to show that to you. But before we get him out, or her out, this is snake skin, all right? So this is the full skin of a snake that passed away and gave his life so we can gave his body so we can teach other kids. So you can notice here, it's huge, right?
The snake is super long.
This was a Burmese python, and you can see all of these scales that go down the body. So when a snake sheds its skin, only the top layer of this is going to come off. And it's kind of clear and it kind of feels papery, whereas this is the full snake skin. At the very end, if you're in the room, I'll let you come see this, okay? And then we're going to show you some snake skins here. So this is a shed skin from a live snake, okay? You guys here, be really quiet. You hear that?
Yeah.
It's really papery. It's very thin, and it's very very thin and it's very, very light. So just like sometimes when you scratch your arm and little pieces of skin come off, you gotta put some moisturizer on. Well, snakes don't have moisturizer, so their skin comes off in one big piece, right? So can you guys be really gentle? We can pass this around, okay?
Yeah.
So pass this to the next family when you're done. Be very gentle.
Don't break it.
Yeah, don't break it. Well, we get them all the time. So snakes shed their skin pretty regularly. When they're first growing up as babies, they'll shed their skin about once every month. And then as they grow older, it can be once a year, it can be twice a year. It really depends. And depends on how large the animal is. So one thing that's cool about snakes is they never stop growing. They grow their entire lives. So even if it's a really, really old snake, it may only shed its skin once a year, but you know it's still growing. So one thing that people often ask about these animals is how do they get their skin off? So let's talk with our friend Billy here. Billy is a look, don't touch animal, okay?
Billy.
She's big. So this is Billy. She's a reticulated python. Reticulated pythons are the longest species of python in the world, of snake in the world even, okay? The fattest species of snake, or the biggest species, is the anaconda, but reticulated pythons are longer. So guys, remember, we're not gonna touch, but I'm gonna walk around and show you that you can tell she's about to shed her skin, okay? So when you're looking at her, you're gonna see her eyes are kind of a milky blue color. We call this going into blue with reptiles, okay? Yeah, she's big. So as you can see, her eyes are kind of going this milky blue color. So she sheds probably once every 2 months, right? And before they shed their skin, snakes' eyes are going to get that little milky blue color because what's happening is there's a layer of liquid that is going between the scales on their new skin and their old skin to kind of loosen it up, right? So remember how I said that snakes have a scale over their eyes? That milky blue, that's that scale that's coming loose so that then they can get the whole skin off their body. So our last animal was kind of just sitting in one place, right? The ball python. That's because that's a terrestrial species, which means he lives his whole life on the ground. He could go in a tree if he wanted, but he's kind of fat, like we talked about, and he doesn't really want to. Whereas you look at Billy here, and I'm holding her, she's really heavy, and she's going to climb all over me and drape her whole body against me and really use me kind of as a tree. She is semi-arboreal. Can you say that? Semi-arboreal, yes. So semi means partially, and arboreal means tree dwelling. So she partially lives in the trees. So what that means is she does spend a lot of time on the ground, but she also really likes to climb a bit, which is why when she's on me like this, I can kind of hold her like this, and she's just hanging out. She's totally anchored onto my arm, and she's not going to move anywhere. So our last animal is coming up. So we're going to take some time now to talk some questions, okay? So we're going to do about 10 minutes of questions, and then we'll take out our last animal. Does that sound good? So I'm going to go around the room, and I'm going to go family to family, and if you have a question, you can ask it, and then we'll go online, okay? So you guys here, do you have any questions about any of the animals we saw?
I have some things that I'm going to say.
You can tell me, you want to tell me at the end, and we'll do questions first? Did you have a question?
Why do snakes shed their skin?
Why do snakes shed their skin? That's a really good question. So you know when you go back to school and summer break is over and you're going back to school and your mom makes you try on all your clothes and some of them don't fit? Because you're growing, right? So snakes can't put on sweaters to see how much they're growing. Their skin just kind of gets tight and they have to loosen up and put a new one on. Also, Billy's notorious for peeing, so I'm really hoping she does not. So like you would get a new sweater when you need to get new clothes, snakes get new skin when they're growing and they kind of get too tight in the one there. So that's a very good question. Do you guys have a question? Okay, you guys have any questions back here?
You wanted to know how big your bearded dragon would get.
How big our bearded dragon would get? So she's full grown. So bearded dragons can get right around 2 feet long from the tip of their nose to the tip of their tail, right? So just about that long. And they come in a bunch of different colors. So Cinder is an orange bearded dragon. They're usually more of like a yellow tannish. Where are you? They're usually more yellow tan brownish, but she's a specific morph. So we have color morphs, which is kind of like how you can have a yellow lab or a black lab. It's the same animal, but different colors. So we have that in reptiles. You guys back there have any questions? Yeah?
Do snakes ever bite?
Do snakes ever bite? Yes, they do, because anything with a mouth can bite. I don't get bit. Oh, she's peeing. I told you. There she goes. Oh, yeah. Great. Love that. You guys get to smell snake pee. Oh, gosh. Okay, keep going. So snakes do bite. They have mouths and they have butts. So they eat and then they poop, right? So anything with a mouth can bite. And the biggest thing is to know is to, I know. The biggest thing is to make sure, that you learn the body language of your animal. Right? So I'm hanging out with Billy right now, and she's not going to bite me, okay? So I can tell because she's just kind of exploring. She's very calm. Nice. Do you want to take her? You want to come grab her and bring her over there? Maybe let her have some privacy. Oh my gosh. This isn't the worst thing that's happened. So I told you, we had her out earlier because I knew she was going to pee. Well, great. Okay. So yes, the snakes can bite. So the big thing you look at when you're working with a snake is that they don't want to bite you, right? Because they're more scared of us than we are of them. So what you're going to notice with snakes that are going to bite most regularly is they're going to coil back away from you to be able to get more leverage to bite forward. So when I'm holding Billy or any of these other animals and their head's just kind of hanging out and they're just exploring, I'm not too worried about being bit because they don't really seem like they're very scared of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you do get bit by a snake, it's not that bad. I've been bit by a lot of snakes and it kind of feels like a bunch of little paper cuts. But the big thing to know is that if you are out in the wild and you find a snake, like you're hiking or something, don't touch it because you don't know if it could be venomous. So a venomous snake is ones that have like a poison that can go in your body and make you go to the hospital.
Yeah, like a king cobra.
Like a king cobra, yes. Most snakes don't, but that's why we never want to pick up anything we can't identify, right? So do we have any questions in the chat? Not yet? All right, if you guys have any, feel free. What's up? Do reptiles eat cicadas? That's a great question. Oh, I love cicadas. This is so fun to have cicadas around again. So reptiles wouldn't eat cicadas as a main source of their diet because these cicadas only come back every 17 years, right? But a lot of reptiles will eat bugs. So at this time, when all of these cicadas are back, you're going to notice a really big boom in a lot of other species because they were able to eat a lot more during the summer and then have more babies because they had more food in them to make more babies. So yes, they would eat cicadas, some species, but not all of them. But us at the rescue and us with our own animals, we don't feed our animals any bugs from outside. Because sometimes bugs from outside can have diseases or parasites or bad things that we don't really want our animals eating. So it's safer for us to buy them from people who are breeding bugs that we know that they're healthy and being fed a good diet. Yes?
How would you tell how old a reptile?
How can you tell how old a reptile is? It's a really good question. So you can't really tell because they don't really have a name tag that says like I'm 3 years old. So we kind of put reptiles in different stages of life that you can identify. So the youngest reptile is going to be a hatchling. And that's like a really, really little baby that probably just hatched out of the egg or was just born. Then next to that is going to be like a young animal. And you're like, oh, it's not really a hatchling, but it's not a juvenile. Where a juvenile is kind of like a teenager. And you're like, oh, it's big, but it's not as big as it could be. And it's still eating a lot, and it's still shedding its skin very often, which means it's probably still growing a lot, right? And then after that, there's adult snakes, or adult reptiles. So a lot of our animals, we don't really know how old they are, but we know they're adults because they don't shed their skin very often, and they're full grown, because we kind of have that baseline idea of how big they get. So we know that. And then after that, there are like senior animals. So those are animals that are going to be a lot older. And you can kind of tell with that because maybe they don't eat as much, or maybe they're slow, or they have some health problems. And you can tell just kind of when people get older too, and you start to get some creaks and cracks, that happens with reptiles too. So great question. Do we have any more questions? Yeah.
I forget.
That's okay. You can ask me later. Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat? All right. And this is our last call for questions. Okay. So we're going to bring out our last animal. I'm going to have you turn your bodies this way for Carl. So Carl is going to be our biggest animal today. You will have an opportunity to pet him, but we're going to have one family come up at a time. Okay. So first of all, I want you to catch the biggest bubble over there. Catch a bubble. Hold it. Breathe, but hold it. Nice, like a puppy now. I'm really hungry. Oh, you are. I can see it down till back. He is hissing because he's not too happy with me because he was asleep. Okay. He's huge. I know. This is Carl.
I bet it's heavy.
He is very heavy. That's why it takes 2 people. So, Carl is a Burmese python. So just like we had a ball python, this is another species of python, but he lives in Burma, which is the area he comes from. So these guys are a really big species of snake, and I'm gonna tell you now, this isn't a great pet unless you know what you're doing, because this guy's still growing, right? So he can get a lot bigger than this. So these guys are really cool though, because they do have these big bodies and they can eat a lot of food and then go a very long time without eating. So snakes, catch a bubble. Thank you. So snakes in general are only going to eat, when I feed my snakes, I feed them about once a week, right? In the wild, they're going to eat whatever they can find, okay? Oh, skin's coming off. So in the wild, you don't know how often they're going to get a meal. So usually they can eat really, really big things and then go a really long time without eating them, right? So something about Burmese pythons that's a little bit sad is that you may have heard of invasive species. Does anyone know what that is?
No.
In the back there. Yeah.
An animal that doesn't belong there from like a different country or something?
Yeah, so it's exactly what it is. So it's an animal that is living somewhere as a wild population that doesn't belong there. So Burmese pythons are a good example of an invasive species. So to be an invasive species somewhere, an animal has to have a population that is reproducing, right? So down in the Everglades in Florida, a few years ago, there was a really bad hurricane. And there's a lot of python breeders down in Florida that their houses were destroyed. And after that, a lot of their animals got out. And now they live, in Florida. Okay, and now they live in Florida. Okay, great. There's still pee on my back. Okay, and now they live in Florida. So one of the other problems we have is that a lot of people, remember how we talked that they can live a long time and get really big and all those fun things about reptiles? Sometimes people will be like, animal's too big, it's too much work, it's gonna get too old. I'm just gonna put it in the wild. And that's not a good thing, because these animals can live a lot of places. And what they do is they really hurt native wildlife, okay? So now you have problems with like Burmese pythons down in Florida, where now people like us who have a lot of pets and we're good at taking care of our pet reptiles, if you're in Florida, legally it's a lot harder to own reptiles now because some people weren't responsible with their animals, right? So it's really important that we do this kind of education and we get younger people involved in noticing that invasive species are bad and what can we do to protect native species so that we can continue to have these cool animals as pets, right? All right, so I'm going to have you guys come up one family at a time, and I'm going to call you up. Or excuse me, Anna's going to call you up. Here's the thing. When you pet Carl here, we're going to only do from here down. Do not go near his head, okay? Because this is a big animal, and anything with a mouth can bite. And we don't want that to happen, right? Even though he's calm right now, we don't want to freak him out. So I'm going to have you use the 2-finger method, and you can go down his back towards his tail. And at that time, when you come up, if you have any more questions for me, you can ask, okay? All right, so this first family here, you guys want to come up? And if parents want to take pictures, you're more than welcome to. So come on over here. On this side of it, 2 fingers. I know, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, he's moving.
He is moving because he's alive.
No words.
Oh,
You guys don't sit still either, do you?
Awesome. Awesome. All right. You guys can go back and take a seat, okay?
Wait, question?
Do you have a question? Nope, this side. Come over here. Mm-hmm.
So I don't have questions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not great.
Come on.
All right, so you guys, right here, you guys want to come up?
Come here, boys.
2 fingers. Yeah, so one thing you guys are going to notice when you're petting him, a lot of people think snakes are slimy. They're not. They're just cold because they're cold-blooded species. So reptiles are cold-blooded, which means they need the sun or they need other sources of heat to get them warm, right? So a lot of people will think that snakes are all slimy and stuff. No, they're nice and soft. They're just cold. Good job. All right, I'm going to have you guys sit down, and then if you guys want to come up. All right.
Can we ask the same question?
Absolutely.
We had, what we were told by the zoo was a rat snake up there
Yes.
in our bathtub one day.
Yes.
It was not big, but we're wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that kind of snake.
Yes, that's a great question. So we have a species of snake in Kentucky and in Ohio called the gray rat snake. They're super cool. They eat a lot of mice that might be around your house or other invasive like pests and stuff that you don't want there. So it's really awesome if you see a rat snake. So
It's not in your bathtub.
it can be a little alarming when it's in your bathtub. I will say, I love snakes. Don't want them in my toilet. So like, I get it, right? So gray rat snakes are another type of semi-arboreal species. Who remembers what that is? Yes. That is perfect. So they live on the ground and they also live in trees. So if you see a snake in your yard on the ground and it's black, probably a gray rat snake. If you see a snake in your tree, probably a gray rat snake. If you're ever nervous, you can call us and we're happy to help you out and tell you what to do. So that's a great point though that you called the zoo to find out what it was. Because we never want to touch an animal that we don't know what it is. Because you can get hurt and you don't want that to happen.
Oh, we get calls where we've got.
I get calls. So I am the intake coordinator for Arrowhead Reptile Rescue, and I get calls all the time of pythons in people's yards, and it's always a gray rat snake. And I'm hoping for the day it's really a python, because that'll just be a little bit more fun. All right, you guys want to go sit back down? All right, the last family, you guys want to come up? We'll do one second. What's your question? Go ahead, what's your question?
We keep seeing this snake in our yard. It's gray, but we don't know what it is.
It's probably a gray rat snake. So gray rat snakes are going to live in one area, and then during the winter they go to sleep, and then they're going to wake up in the summertime, and they're going to be back in your yard because they have a little, home there. So that's why you don't want to move them. You just want to give them space. Go this way. Go down that way. Yeah, thank you. So only go from up here to down there. Good job. Do you guys have any questions? What's your questions? Okay. I know, it's distracting. Are Komodo dragons friendly? That's a great question. So Komodo dragons are probably one of the best known lizards in the world. They are not very friendly. So they are venomous, which means that they can put like a poison in your body and it can hurt and you have to go to the doctor like right now. So they are a monitor lizard, just like the one I showed you. And monitor lizards in general are a little bit more finicky and they're not really that friendly. So no, Komodo dragons in general are not very friendly. That's a good question. Komodo dragons are one of the largest lizard species in the world. That's a good job. Yes, you have another question?
What kind of pattern on the back do the rat snakes
have? So rat snakes are going to have a couple different patterns on their back. So when they're babies, they're going to kind of have a checkerboard that's going to be like gray and black. And when they're adults, they might keep it, but they get very dark. And you're going to know a gray rat snake because the underside of their chin is going to be white and they're going to have a white bottom lip. So that's like a surefire way to know it's a gray rat snake. So that's what people can send me, even if you send me like a blurry picture, I can look at that and be like, yeah, that's a gray rat snake because I know that lip. Yeah, you have a question?
How are snakes born?
How are snakes born? That's a great question. All right, you guys want to go sit back down? Okay.
We saw a snake once?
Yeah,
And it went up the tree and then it went into a birdhouse
Probably.
and ate 3 eggs.
that's a great rat snake right there. So how are snakes born? So there's a couple ways snakes can be born. So there are 3 different ways snakes can be born, but the 2 biggest ones is a mama snake can lay eggs, and then they have to hatch. So they can take a few weeks to a few months to hatch, right? And then the other way is some snakes give live birth. So like mammals will have, like if your dog will have puppies, whereas a duck will lay eggs. Some snakes will have baby snakes, and some snakes will have eggs. So it just depends on the species. What other questions do we have? Yes.
Well, I don't think I could agree a rat snake because I didn't, last time I saw it, I didn't see a white eye on any of it.
All right, well, you'll have to take a better look next time. Yeah.
You said you have, what, 9 at home?
Yes.
What do you have?
What do I have? That's a great question. So I keep a few different species. What I'm most interested in is Moralia, which is the genus. So I have 2 different species of Moralia. So it goes genus and then species, right? So I have Moralia bredli, which is a Bredl's python, and those are a Central Australian carpet python species, which is semi-arboreal. And then I have Moralia viridis, which is a green tree python, and those are totally arboreal. They live in the trees 100% of the time. Have you ever read the book Verity? Yes, you guys have read it. Well, good thing we're at a library. If you guys go check out the book Verity, that's about green tree pythons. And something that's really cool with green tree pythons is you hear their name, green tree python, green snake lives in the tree. When they're born, they're either bright red or they're bright yellow. So they don't really know why that is right now. We're still trying to figure that out. The best hypothesis that scientists have about this is that they, when they're babies, are more likely to live very low in the brush in Papua New Guinea, in Australia, in the rainforest, where there's dead leaves that are red and yellow. And then when they're adults, they climb up to the top where it's green leaves, right? So they go through something called an ontogenetic color change. So you guys say that? So ontogenetic color change. So that's an OCC. That's what we call it, like in the hobby. That is pretty common. A lot of species will do that, but the green tree python is really known for it because it's so drastic. Yes.
I forgot.
Okay, that's okay. Do we have any other questions? Yes, in the back there. Oh, that's okay. I'll be here for a little bit afterwards. All right. So if do we have any questions online? All right. So you guys all look pretty young. But when you're 14, if you decide you're still interested in reptiles, you can start volunteering with Arrowhead Reptile Rescue. So make sure you remember our name. We have a Facebook and we have an Instagram, but I'm in charge of the Instagram and I don't post a lot. Sorry. So if you're interested in volunteering or fostering or adopting any of our animals, you can check out there, okay? Yes.
What's the most interesting thing you've ever rescued as a person or as a group?
I'm trying to think what we're allowed to say. We get some really interesting calls. The biggest, my favorite thing that we can rescue is we do occasionally get calls for venomous snakes. So we will have rattlesnakes come in. We'll have copperheads, which is a native venomous snake. But then also we can get a lot of crocodilians. So unfortunately, like alligators, crocodiles, and caimans. Yep. Or gharials. We don't get a lot of gharials. That's very good knowledge to have that. So we are in a tough spot being in the Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky area, because Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky all have vastly different laws regarding these are considered dangerous species or exotics, right? So at the rescue right now, we have a couple caiman. We just have one right now. We have one caiman. We have one alligator snapping turtle that unfortunately, because we had to come to Kentucky today, we can't bring those across state lines. So that also happens where in Indiana, totally legal to have a pet alligator. Ohio and Kentucky, not allowed at all. All right, yeah, that's my face too. So a few years ago, the laws changed, and you used to be able to have them, but it was unfortunately after the event in Zanesville where they changed a lot of the exotic animal laws. Which if you don't know, you can look that up. But we're not talk about it now. But so they changed a lot of the exotic animal laws there. So we, as a rescue, had to make a decision whether we were going to keep working with these animals that were then outlawed in Ohio. And unfortunately, due to permit costs, we are no longer able to take care of alligators or crocodiles. The only crocodilian that we can take care of is the dwarf caiman, which is the only species allowed in Ohio, which is also the worst species of crocodilian to work with because they're the meanest. So it's a double-edged sword. But when we do have alligators or crocodiles come into the rescue, we have a protocol for getting them down to a gator farm in Florida. So we can still help people out. And if you ever hear someone selling an alligator or you see that, call us. That's not allowed. Yes, you have another question, bud?
Do you only rescue reptiles?
We do only rescue reptiles. Yep. So Arrowhead Reptile Rescue, that's what we do. Our director, he's great. He's very afraid of tarantulas, so we don't have any of those either.
We also do some amphibians.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. We do reptiles and amphibians, but Arrowhead Amphibian Reptile Rescue is a little long. Yes. So the thing is with frogs and other amphibians is that they are a little bit harder to care for. So if they come in sick, they usually don't make it, as opposed to reptiles who are a little bit easier to rehabilitate. You have a question? Which one's the biggest snake that we have or in the world? In the world, okay. Biggest snake in the world is the longest snake in the world is going to be a reticulated python. Biggest snake in the world, green anaconda, because they're both very long and very thick, like me. So then the smallest snakes in the world are going to be something that's kind of, I can't tell you the exact species, but the smallest I know of in the United States is the worm snake. They're like this big. They got a teeny tiny little mouth like this. I don't even know what they eat because they're so small, because they are literally the size of worms, and those are found in Texas. Any other questions?
Are they venomous?
No, they are not. No.
I kind of guessed that.
Yeah. Those are too small. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We're going to be here for a little bit longer if you guys have any questions. So I really appreciate your time today. It's really exciting to be doing shows again. So please look us up on Facebook and on our website, and I hope we can do more. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you can come in and pick up your summer reading kickoff stuff. Bye.
People.
Make sure everyone uses